Hello, travelers. Professor GreyTail here. I know that you have already learned much about our magical world, where good and evil intertwine their wands in an eternal dance. But I am certain I can still surprise you. Night settled softly over the ancient spires of Hogwarts, wrapping the castle in a cloak of silvered moonlight. Torches flickered along the stone corridors, whispering as though the flames carried secrets of their own. It was in such quiet hours that Albus Dumbledore often walked alone, for silence had a way of drawing old memories out of their hiding places. On this night, however, something different stirred. A faint tremor in the air, like the echo of a spell cast long ago, but only now returning home. Dumbledore paused at a high window overlooking the grounds. The black lake shimmered darkly below, but his blue eyes fixed upon the distant tree line of the forbidden forest, where a pulse of pale light flickered once and vanished. A small frown creased his brow. Hogwarts was a living fortress of enchantments. Almost nothing slipped past its wards unnoticed. Yet that glimmer had felt familiar in a way that set his heart beating slowly, heavily. He whispered to himself, "It cannot be." But deep down, he already knew what it was, the signature of a wand he had once crafted in secret during the rash brilliance of his youth. A wand never meant to be found. A wand he had believed destroyed, a forgotten wand. As the strange tremor faded, Dumbledore left the window and descended the staircase with unusual haste. His robes swept behind him like drifting shadows, though his expression remained calm. The castle need not know he was troubled. It had enough to worry about with mischievous students and restless poltergeists. In his office, the enchanted instruments lining the shelves trembled as he entered, their delicate silver gears whirling in alarm. A map on the far wall blotched itself with a spreading bloom of red sparks, an indication of unstable magical surges somewhere beyond the grounds. "So it begins," he murmured. He reached into a crystal drawer and withdrew a small silver box etched with runes. Inside lay fragments of wood, splinters from the destroyed prototype wand he had crafted as a young man, the twin he had made to study the properties of the Elder Wand. It had been a reckless experiment, guided more by ambition than wisdom, and one he had sworn to bury forever. But now the fragments trembled, responding to something beyond the castle walls. Someone had recovered the original, and worse, they were using it. Before he could ponder further, a soft knock sounded at the door. Dumbledore straightened his robes and called gently, "Enter." The door opened to reveal Minerva McGonagall, young yet already stern-eyed and sharp-witted. She carried herself with the brisk purpose of someone who had just witnessed something troubling. "Headmaster," she said, though he was not yet headmaster then. "Forgive the interruption, but several students reported strange flashes beyond the forest. Hagrid saw them too. He asked me to inform you. I am grateful, Minerva." He studied her face a moment. "Tell me, did the lights appear unnatural?" Her eyebrows knit. "Yes, like magic straining against itself." Dumbledore nodded slowly. The description fit all too well. The forgotten wand had been unstable from the beginning. It was unpredictable, unruly, and far too powerful for any unskilled hand. Yet someone dangerous enough to escape Azkaban only days before, might believe they could harness it. He closed the silver box and turned to McGonagall. "Minerva," he said softly, "I must leave the grounds tonight. There is a matter I can no longer delay." Her expression sharpened with concern. Should I alert the ministry? Not yet. This is a personal error returning to haunt me. I would spare the ministry the details until the truth is clearer. She hesitated, then inclined her head. Very well, but you should not go alone. A gentle smile touched his lips. I will manage. And you, my dear colleague, must ensure Hogwarts sleeps safely. Yet even as he said it, Dumbledore felt a stirring unease. If the wand was active again, disturbances would only grow. And though he wished to spare Minerva the danger, he knew her sense of duty might soon draw her into this mystery, whether he wished it or not. With a final nod, Dumbledore swept from the office, descending the spiral staircase. The castle hummed with quiet magic around him, but he felt the weight of old burdens settling upon his shoulders. Outside, the night air greeted him with the crisp bite of early spring. Beyond the gates of Hogwarts, the world waited. Somewhere in the dark, a fugitive wielded the unstable creation he had once forged, and the tremors of its magic had begun to ripple outward, threatening far more than a peaceful night's rest. Dumbledore stepped into the shadows, and the shadows seemed to bow back, as though recognizing the gravity of what had returned. The hunt for the forgotten wand had begun. The wind carried the scent of pine and damp earth as Dumbledore strode down the narrow road leading from Hogwarts. Moonlight gleamed upon his half-moon spectacles, and though his steps were measured, each one seemed guided by a growing urgency. The magical disturbance had left a faint trail, a thinning ribbon of unstable energy that only the most skilled of wizards could sense. To Dumbledore, it pulsed like a distant heartbeat. The night was quiet, save for the low rustle of branches, yet beneath that quiet, he felt the land itself holding its breath. He had nearly reached the outskirts of Hogsmeade when another flicker of pale, rippling light shimmered across the sky, brighter this time, and unmistakably the same signature he had sensed earlier. The forgotten wand was active again, calling out like an echo of a mistake returning to claim its due. Dumbledore halted, watching the light fade. Whoever wields it is growing reckless. He resumed walking, but now his pace quickened. Hogsmeade lay still at this hour, its windows dark and chimneys cold. Yet, as he passed the Hog's Head, a familiar goat bleated from within, and he heard the muffled voice of his brother Aberforth arguing with something, or someone, though the words were too faint to decipher. Dumbledore paused only briefly, tempted to seek counsel, but time pressed hard against his conscience. He moved on. A narrow lane led toward the shadowed hills behind the village, and he followed the tug of the disturbance up the winding path. The air grew colder. Wisps of fog curled around him like ghostly fingers, though no weather charm caused them. This fog was wild magic. Magic stirred by an unstable source, warping the night in subtle ways. At the crest of the hill, he found the first true sign of the wand's passage. A ring of scorched earth marked the ground, still warm beneath his fingertips. At its center, shards of shattered stone lay scattered as though a small monument had exploded. Dumbledore knelt, brushing the fragments aside until he uncovered a charred strip of cloth half buried in the soil. Azkaban prisoner's fabric. So the rumors were true. The fugitive, Callistus Brine, had indeed escaped the island fortress. A dangerous man even before imprisonment, Brine had served briefly under Grindelwald in his youth, known for his obsession with experimental spellcraft. He would be drawn irresistibly to the power of an unfinished creation like the Forgotten Wand. Yet something troubled Dumbledore more than Brine's involvement. The scorch marks were angled outward, not inward. Whatever explosion had occurred, it was not the result of careless spellcasting, but a deliberate test, one that the wand had survived. A twig snapped behind him. Dumbledore rose swiftly, wand in hand, but a familiar voice cut through the fog. "You truly thought I'd let you wander off alone?" Minerva McGonagall stepped into view, breath lightly visible in the chilly air. Her expression held equal parts defiance and concern. "Minerva," Dumbledore sighed, though a faint smile tugged at his mouth. "I asked you to remain at Hogwarts." "You asked," she replied, lifting her chin. "I, however, concluded that the castle is safer than you are tonight, especially if you are going after whatever caused that." She gestured toward the scorched circle. Dumbledore considered refusing her, but Minerva was not one to be turned aside once her mind was set. And truthfully, her sharp instincts and unwavering courage would be of use before the night was through. He nodded. "Very well, but you must keep close." "Gladly," she said. "Now, where to next?" Dumbledore turned his gaze eastward, where the faintest shimmer of unstable magic drifted like mist over the distant hills. The disturbance moves toward the old Hogsmeade caverns, a place once used for experimental enchantments during the war. If Callistus Brine seeks to unlock the wand's full power, he will go where traces of Grindelwald's hidden workings still linger. Minerva's eyes tightened. Then we should hurry. Together they descended the hill, following the fading trail. The night deepened around them, and the fog grew thick, muffling every sound except their footsteps. As they neared a ravine lined with crooked trees, a sudden vibration trembled through the ground, like thunder beneath the soil. Birds shrieked from the branches, fleeing into the sky. Then came a flash, a blinding burst of pale blue light erupting from the ravine's depths. Minerva shielded her eyes. That was no ordinary spell. "No," Dumbledore agreed, already striding toward the source. "The wand is resisting him." They reached the mouth of a narrow cave, its entrance glowing faintly with leftover magic that danced like drifting embers. The air inside hummed with a dangerous warmth. Dumbledore lifted his hand. "Stay behind me." But Minerva stepped forward beside him. "I'll not cower outside while danger waits within." He said nothing more. Their argument would only waste time. Together, they entered the cavern. The walls pulsed faintly as though alive, reacting to the unstable power that had recently surged through them. Deeper inside, the passage widened into a chamber once used for magical research, now cracked and unstable from violent spellwork. At its center stood Callistus Brine. His robes were tattered, his face gaunt from his time in Azkaban, but his eyes blazed with a feverish hunger. In his hand, he gripped the forgotten wand, long, pale, and faintly luminous, as though carved from moonlit bone. Sparks crawled up its length, fighting against his control. "So," Brine rasped, "the Creator himself finally comes." Dumbledore stepped forward, calm yet grave. "Callistus, that wand is incomplete. Its power is unrefined and perilous. Release it before it destroys far more than you intend." Brine laughed, a thin, hollow sound. "You hid this masterpiece from the world. Even Grindelwald suspected its existence, but you denied him. Now I shall wield what neither of you dared." A tremor shook the chamber. Stones fell from the ceiling. Minerva whispered, "He cannot control it." "No," Dumbledore replied softly, "but he believes he can." Brine raised the wand. "Let us see which of us the magic favors." With a wild swing, he cast a spell, and the cavern exploded in light. The blast struck with the force of a storm loosed underground. Light and dust surged outward, hurling Minerva and Dumbledore back toward the cavern wall. The air roared as currents of unstable magic writhed like serpents, slashing through the chamber in violent arcs. The forgotten wand screamed with power. Dumbledore could almost hear it, a shrill vibration echoing in the bones of the earth itself. He rose swiftly, cloak swirling around him, and steadied Minerva with a hand. "Are you hurt?" "Only rattled," she answered, brushing dust from her sleeves. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with bracing determination. "He will tear the mountain apart if he continues." Dumbledore's eyes fixed on Callistus Brine, who now wavered where he stood at the center of the shattered chamber. The blast had not spared him. His robes were scorched, his breath ragged, yet the wand in his grip continued to blaze, fighting him, resisting him, refusing his control. The air around him flickered like a mirage. Brine raised the wand again, though his hand shook violently. "I felt it," he gasped. "Just a glimpse of the power your prototype hides. You pretended it failed, Dumbledore, but it lives, a marvel, even unfinished." "Callistus," Dumbledore said, stepping forward, "the wand does not obey you. It was forged to study a force far older and deeper than ordinary magic. Its heart is flawed. You cannot master it." "Cannot?" Brine snarled. "Or you feared to try?" With a furious cry, he unleashed another spell, a whip of raw magic that lashed toward the two professors. Dumbledore swept his wand upward, conjuring a shimmering arc of protective light. The strike shattered against it, throwing sparks across the cavern floor. Minerva moved swiftly, firing a stunner toward Brine, but the wild magic swirling around him twisted the spell aside, melting it into a harmless shimmer. She hissed under her breath, already preparing another. The cavern groaned as fractures spread along the ceiling. Fragments of stone fell like heavy rain. Dumbledore raised his voice over the crashing debris. "Callistus, listen to me. That wand contains an enchantment I never completed. Its power strains against its wielder. The more you force it, the more it will unravel you." Brine's laugh was half mad, half triumphant. "Then I shall complete what you abandoned." Grindelwald believed the Elder Wand had a twin. Now I hold the proof. He pressed his free hand to the glowing wood as if to fuse his will into it. For a moment, the cavern fell silent. Then the wand pulsed, once sharply, and the pulse flung Brine backward as if struck by lightning. He slammed into a pillar, trembling as the wand rolled loose from his grip, spinning across the stone floor until it came to rest halfway between him and Dumbledore. The chamber's lights dimmed, but not fully. The wand still glimmered where it lay, a faint heartbeat of power echoing from its core. Minerva's eyes widened. Dumbledore, it is choosing. He felt it too. A pull, not of invitation, but of recognition. This was his work, his burden. Only he understood its flawed nature, the dangerous weave of magic within its spine. Only he knew the spell that could subdue it. But before he could step forward, Brine lunged. The fugitive crawled across the broken floor, fingers outstretched, desperate to reclaim the wand. Blood marked his palm, yet he dragged himself onward with a fevered strength born of obsession. "No," Minerva whispered, raising her wand. Dumbledore touched her arm. "Wait." For now, he understood. The wand itself resisted Brine. Touching it again might be his undoing. But they needed him alive, for questions, for answers, for whatever motives had driven him to this madness. The cavern trembled again. A deep groan rolled beneath their feet, and a crack split across the floor like a gaping maw. Brine reached the wand, his fingertips brushing its glowing surface, and the wand erupted in a flare of white-blue brilliance. A scream tore from his throat as the magic surged into him, throwing his body into a violent arch. For an instant, he was suspended in midair, consumed by the unstable force he sought to control. Then the light hurled him back with brutal force, and he struck the ground, unmoving. Dumbledore stepped forward at once, conjuring a shield as the wand continued to glow erratically, pulsing in irregular bursts. The chamber filled with the scent of scorched stone. Minerva knelt beside Brine, checking his pulse. "Alive," she murmured, "but barely." Dumbledore exhaled slowly. The conflict now was clear, stopping the forgotten wand before its unstable power spread beyond their reach. He lifted his gaze toward the trembling artifact lying on the cavern floor. "We must contain it," he said. But as he approached, the wand pulsed again, this time not with wild fury, but with a deliberate, almost thoughtful rhythm. The glow steadied, sharpening into a thin line of pale blue light that stretched toward the far wall. As the light touched stone, the surface rippled like water. A doorway formed, a hidden doorway carved by old enchantments Dumbledore recognized too well. Minerva's breath caught. "What is that?" "A chamber," Dumbledore said quietly, "built long ago and sealed for a reason." The wand's glow intensified, casting shadows that danced like restless spirits across the walls. It was pointing the way deeper, into a place tied not only to Dumbledore's forgotten creation, but to Grindelwald's lingering secrets. "We have no choice," Dumbledore said softly. "We follow where it leads." And together, with Brine unconscious behind them and the cavern shaking around them, they stepped toward the doorway the wand had awakened. The doorway shimmered like a veil spun from moonlit water. As Dumbledore and Minerva crossed its threshold, the air grew colder, as though the very stones remembered old sorrows and whispered them in a language too ancient to hear. The chamber beyond was narrow at first, a passage carved deep beneath the hill, untouched by wandlight for decades. Threads of pale luminescence clung to the walls, residual traces of spells older than either of them wished to confront. The forgotten wand, still glowing faintly in the ruined cavern behind them, cast a soft radiance through the doorway, though it remained on the floor and did not follow. Whatever power guided this entrance had awakened merely at its proximity. Minerva's voice was hushed. "This place, Dumbledore, was it built during Grindelwald's rise?" His answer came slowly. "A fragment of a larger network, yes. He created safe havens, hidden laboratories, sanctums for experiments never meant to be seen by the common wizarding world. Most were dismantled after his fall, but some required deeper sealing. This was one." As they advanced, the passage widened into a circular hall. Dust lay thick along the ground, disturbed only by the faint energy that hummed through the chamber. In its center stood an ancient pedestal, carved with overlapping runes, faded by time yet unmistakable in their lineage. They were twin markings to the runes etched upon the Elder Wand itself. Minerva's breath caught. This chamber was crafted for wandlore, not ordinary study. This is work meant to reshape it. Dumbledore examined the pedestal, fingers tracing the worn lines. "Years before I faced Grindelwald in battle, there were theories we both questioned. Questions about the deeper nature of mastery, allegiance, and the ancient magic bound into the Deathly Hallows. I abandoned those questions. He did not. Then this..." Minerva gestured around the hall. "This place is tied to his ambition." "Yes," Dumbledore said softly, "and to an ambition I once shared." She looked at him sharply, but he did not flinch. He had no desire to cloak his past in gentleness. What mattered now was truth, for only truth could prepare them for whatever lay ahead. A sudden vibration quivered through the air, faint but sharp, like a plucked string. The pedestal responded, glowing along its carved channels. A thin seam of light spread across the far wall, forming another doorway, this one smaller, its shape jagged and irregular, as though created in haste. Minerva raised her wand. "Something waits beyond." "Not something," Dumbledore murmured. "Someone." They stepped forward. The second chamber was darker, colder, its stone walls blackened by scorch marks. Unfinished diagrams covered the floor, hastily drawn circles, fragments of spellcraft, sketches of wand cores and alignments. But one sight stood out among the ruins: a collapsed table littered with pieces of pale wood identical to the material of the forgotten wand. Minerva knelt beside the fragments. They match your prototype." "Indeed." He touched one shard, and it vibrated faintly. "Years ago, Grindelwald somehow gained access to designs I believed I had hidden. I never discovered how. He intended to alter the wand, not simply as a weapon, but to study allegiance itself. But you stopped the work." "I did. I feared where it might lead. Yet he had already tampered with some of the components before I reclaimed them." Minerva stood, her expression grave. "Then the forgotten wand is not entirely your creation?" "No," he said. "It is ours, though I alone must bear responsibility for allowing it to exist at all." A sudden sound echoed, a low, distant groan reverberating through the stone corridors. The hill trembled above them. Dumbledore and Minerva exchanged a sharp glance. The unstable magic from the cavern was spreading. "We cannot linger," she said. "The entire underground may collapse." "Agreed." As they turned back toward the outer hall, a pale shimmer formed behind them, just above the scattered fragments on the floor. The fragments rose, weightless, drifting like leaves in a strange wind. They circled one another, drawing together, spinning faster and faster until they formed the outline of a wand, ethereal, ghostly, a memory of what once existed. Minerva stepped back. "What is this?" "A resonance," Dumbledore whispered. "A reaction to the forgotten wand above. The magic connecting them has awakened." The spectral wand pointed toward the outer hall, urging them to follow. Its light wavered as though in warning. They hurried after it. But as they reached the first pedestal chamber, the ground heaved beneath them. Cracks streaked across the floor. Dust showered from the ceiling in thick clouds. The spectral wand shot upward like a beacon, piercing through the doorway they had entered earlier. Minerva steadied herself against a wall. "Dumbledore, the cavern has grown unstable. If the entire structure collapses, it will bury not only us, but Callistus Brine and the Forgotten Wand as well," he said. "We must reach him before the mountain decides our fate for us." They pushed into the passage. The once still corridor now shook violently, stones falling in bursts. A jagged block crashed behind them, sealing part of the path. They pressed forward through swirling dust, emerging at last into the ruined cavern. The sight froze them both. The forgotten wand no longer lay on the ground. It hovered in midair, glowing with fierce, rhythmic pulses, each brighter than the last. The light drew strands of magic from the walls, pulling them inward as though the wand were inhaling the very foundation of the cavern. The spectral wand they had seen below merged into its glow and vanished. Beside the floating wand, Callistus Brine, though conscious now, could only stare in terror as the power he sought to control spiraled beyond all limits. Minerva raised her arm to shield her eyes from the brilliance. "It is preparing to break free. Dumbledore, if it ruptures..." He didn't let her finish. Dumbledore stepped forward, voice rising in a command that shook the air. Enough. The wand froze mid-pulse, flickering like a candle fighting a storm. Raw magic crackled around him, yet he walked through it unharmed, as though answering a call only he could hear. He stopped before the rogue artifact, his face stern and sorrowful. "This must end," he murmured. But as he reached out, a voice, thin, trembling, rose behind him. "Don't touch it!" Callistus struggled to his feet, swaying. Fear and desperation warred in his eyes. "If you take it," he rasped, "it will obey you. And then all of this, all that Grindelwald began, will awaken again." Minerva drew her wand defensively, but Dumbledore did not look away from the floating artifact. His hand hovered an inch from its surface, and the wand pulsed, awaiting his choice. For a heartbeat, all sound faded. The trembling earth, the crackling magic, even Minerva's sharp intake of breath. Only the wand's soft pulse remained, echoing through the cavern like the beating of some ancient, restless heart. Dumbledore stood before it, robes stirring though no wind touched him. His fingers hovered near the shimmering wood, close enough for the wand to sense the presence of its maker. Behind him, Callistus Brine trembled as though holding on to the last thread of his sanity. "You don't understand," he whispered, voice cracking under the weight of fear. "If you reclaim it, if you bind it to yourself, everything Grindelwald sought will rise again. The enchantments woven into its core, they answer to you. They always have." Dumbledore did not turn. His gaze remained fixed upon the strange, luminous wand floating before him, vibrating with unstable power. He felt its resonance deep within his chest, a familiar yet unwanted echo of a path he had abandoned long ago. Minerva stepped closer, wand at the ready. "Dumbledore," she said softly, "the cavern cannot hold much longer. Whatever must be done, do it swiftly." The floor buckled beneath them, a loud crack racing across the stone like lightning. Dust poured from the ceiling, and the air thickened with the heat of wild magic. Brine stumbled but managed to remain upright, driven by some frantic need to stop what he feared might unfold. Dumbledore slowly lowered his hand, and at that gesture, the wand steadied its frantic pulsing, as though it recognized him more clearly. The light softened, turning from blinding white to a deep, humming blue. "It is listening," Minerva murmured. "No," Dumbledore said quietly. "It is remembering." He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering the strength of a decision he had hoped never to face. When he spoke again, his voice was firm, anchored by the weight of years. "This wand was born of my mistakes. Whatever influence Grindelwald left upon it, whatever darkness it absorbed, I will not allow it to choose a fate for anyone but itself." He reached forward. Callistus lurched forward with a cry. "No! If you touch it, it becomes yours. You will bind yourself to it, and to him." A burst of wild magic answered his panic, jolting across the cavern in arcs of blue fire. One struck the ceiling, another the far wall. The mountain groaned. Minerva shouted over the din, "Dumbledore, now!" His fingers closed around the wand. A blinding flash swallowed the cavern. The mountain seemed to inhale, drawing all air into a single, terrible stillness. Dumbledore stood unmoving, arm extended, his hand wrapped around the wand's cold, luminous wood. The light flared up his arm, spreading through the fabric of his robes in glowing veins. For a terrible moment, Minerva feared he would be consumed by the unstable magic he sought to tame. Then, slowly, the wild brilliance dimmed, the trembling softened, the cavern stopped buckling, power gathered inward, folding into Dumbledore's grasp like a bird bowing its head. When the light faded entirely, he lowered his arm. The wand lay quiet in his hand, but its glow had not vanished completely. A faint shimmer lingered beneath the surface, like an ember waiting for wind. Minerva exhaled in relief she did not know she had been holding. "You contained it." "No," Dumbledore said, studying the wand's pale length with grave eyes. "I have not contained it. I have asked it to be still. There is a difference." Before Minerva could answer, a soft groan sounded nearby. Callistus Brine, pale and shaking, knelt on the broken stone floor. His face bore terror and awe in equal measure. "How can you wield it?" he whispered. "It fought me. It nearly tore me apart." "Because he is its maker," Minerva said, though her gaze remained fixed on Dumbledore, worry shadowing her features. Dumbledore stepped toward Brine. "Callistus, your search ends here. Whatever you hoped to achieve with this wand, you must abandon it. Its purpose was never meant for the world, nor for war, nor for ambition." Brine's eyes flickered, rage, despair, and something more fragile beneath them. "You abandoned it," he said bitterly. "You abandoned everything. Grindelwald saw potential where you saw fear." A deep rumble shook the cavern once more, reminding them that time was not on their side. Minerva glanced upward. "The mountain will collapse at any moment." Dumbledore nodded and extended his hand, not the one holding the wand, but the other, open in offering. "Callistus, come. We must leave. Nothing more can be done here." For a long moment, Brine stared at him, torn between defiance and weariness. At last, his shoulders sagged. He reached for Dumbledore's hand, but the cavern disagreed. A sudden roaring crack tore through the chamber as a massive portion of the ceiling gave way. Boulders rained down, striking the floor in a thunderous cascade. One stone smashed between Dumbledore and Brine, forcing Dumbledore back and sending Brine sprawling toward the far wall. Minerva cried out, raising a shield just in time to deflect a falling slab. Dumbledore turned, wand raised, not the forgotten wand, but his own. He cast a spell that forced the debris aside long enough for them to see Brine struggling beneath a corner of collapsed stone. He was alive, but trapped and fading fast. "Save him!" Minerva shouted. Dumbledore moved instantly, carving through fallen rock with precise, powerful sweeps of his wand. But as he drew close, Brine's weakened voice called out, stopping him. "Dumbledore, leave me." "I will not," Dumbledore said, lifting the last of the stone. But Brine shook his head weakly, eyes fixed on the shimmering wand in Dumbledore's other hand. "You don't understand. Now that it has chosen you, others will come. Those who worship his memory, those who want what he left behind." Another quake tore through the cavern. Stone cracked again. Brine coughed, struggling to speak. "Destroy it, before they find you." The ceiling above them split wide. Minerva dashed forward, grabbing Dumbledore's arm. "We must flee!" Brine tried to rise, but the rubble held him. His voice rose in a hoarse cry. "I tried to finish his work. You must end yours." The ceiling finally gave way. A torrent of stone fell upon Callistus Brine as the earth roared its final warning. Dumbledore seized Minerva's arm and apparated them from the collapsing cavern in a burst of spinning darkness, the forgotten wand still burning faintly in his grasp. The world snapped back into place with a shuddering crack, and Dumbledore and Minerva stumbled onto an open stretch of moonlit hillside. The cold night air rushed around them, sharp and welcome after the suffocating heat of the collapsing cavern. Behind them, the hill trembled once more. Then, with a deep, rolling thunder, the earth sank inward as the cavern system collapsed entirely, sealing its secrets beneath tons of stone. A cloud of dust rose into the sky, drifting like a silent omen. Minerva steadied herself, breath tight in her chest. We barely escaped? Yes. Dumbledore's voice was quiet, burdened with something heavier than exhaustion. He gazed at the ruined hillside, sorrow flickering across his features. And Callistus Brine did not. Minerva lowered her wand, her expression grim but steady. He chose his path. You attempted to save him. Perhaps too late, Dumbledore murmured. For a moment, he stood motionless, as though listening to the echo of Brine's final plea, the desperate warning that others would seek the wand now that it had awakened. Finally, Minerva spoke, glancing toward his right hand. And what of the wand itself? Dumbledore looked down. The forgotten wand rested in his grasp, its pale wood still glowing with a faint, inner light. It seemed calm now, subdued by his touch, yet it emanated a quiet tension, like an unsung note vibrating at the edge of hearing. He closed his fingers around it more firmly. It is quiet for the moment, but its nature has not changed. Its instability is bound to awaken again unless it is properly sealed. Minerva stepped closer. Can you destroy it? Dumbledore was silent for several long breaths. I do not yet know. If it were as simple as breaking wood, I would have shattered it years ago. But the core, it is bound by runes older than any wand I have crafted, and part of its enchantment was interfered with, altered by Grindelwald himself. A gust of wind swept across the hill, rustling their robes. Minerva folded her arms. Then the question becomes, who knows of its existence now? Too many, Dumbledore replied softly. Callistus was not alone in his pursuits. During Grindelwald's rise, a number of his followers studied wand lore with fervent devotion. Some vanished after his fall, some fled, and some, his voice trailed. Some still serve ideals they refuse to relinquish. Minerva's brows knit in thought. If the wand resonates with the past, if it carries remnants of what Grindelwald left within it, then those who were once loyal to him might sense its awakening. Just so, Dumbledore said. A heavy silence settled. In the distance, Hogwarts glowed with warm window lights, an island of safety against the pale horizon. Yet the peace seemed fragile now, as though the night itself had shifted into a new, uncertain shape. We must return, Minerva said firmly. The students are sleeping. The staff will not yet know anything is amiss. But if disturbances spread, they may wonder. Dumbledore nodded. You are right. Come. They walked down the hillside, moving briskly through the dark. The path toward the castle wove through open fields silvered by moonlight, and for a time only their footsteps broke the quiet. Yet Minerva could not keep her thoughts contained. Dumbledore, she said at last, there is something you have not told me. He did not deny it. She continued, this wand, this forgotten creation of yours, what did you intend when you first crafted it? You said it was an experiment, a study of the Elder Wand's nature. But surely you knew the danger. I did, he answered, each word careful. Yet in my youth, I believed that knowledge, any knowledge, was worth pursuing. Wand lore has always been a mystery, even to those who dedicate their lives to it. Allegiance, power, sentience, many of these things are only partially understood. I wish to explore their depths. And Grindelwald? A shadow crossed his expression. He wished to control them. Minerva exhaled, her breath forming a pale cloud. Then this wand carries the echo of a shared ambition. An ambition I repudiate, Dumbledore said, the firmness in his tone returning. But echoes do not disappear simply because one wishes them to. They linger. As they neared the narrow lane leading into Hogsmeade, a sudden rustle stirred the hedgerows. Minerva tensed immediately, wand drawn. "Show yourself," she commanded. A small, scruffy figure waddled into the open, Hogsmeade's resident goat belonging to Aberforth. The creature bleated indignantly at being startled, then trotted off down the lane. Minerva sighed and lowered her wand. For a moment, I feared we had been followed. Dumbledore's gaze drifted toward the shadows between the cottages. Fear not the shadows that move. Fear the ones that choose not to. Minerva frowned. "Do you believe we were followed?" "No," he said. "But the night carries a different silence now, one touched by expectation." They continued into Hogsmeade. The village lay quiet, but lamplight glimmered in the window of the Hog's Head. A rough silhouette moved behind the glass, Aberforth tending to late business, unaware of the dangers brewing beyond his doorstep. They did not stop. The path toward Hogwarts lay open and still. When they reached the castle gates, Minerva paused. "What will you do now?" Dumbledore looked at the wand again. "I shall seal it, for tonight. Tomorrow, I will seek a place where its dangerous nature may be restrained more permanently." "And Grindelwald's followers?" "If they come," Dumbledore said, "they will find no welcome here." Together they passed through the gates, climbing the familiar ascent toward the castle's great doors. Hogwarts stood serene beneath the star-filled sky, its ancient towers gleaming faintly. Yet as they stepped inside, a subtle tremor ran through the forgotten wand, soft enough that only Dumbledore felt it. He closed his hand around it, troubled. For the first time since touching the wand, he sensed something beyond its unstable core. A whisper of intent, faint but deliberate. A message buried within its magic. Minerva looked back at him. "Are you well?" "Yes," he said, though unease lingered behind the word, because the whisper was familiar, and it was not his. The castle welcomed them with a hush, as though the old stones sensed their burden. Moonlight streamed through high windows, painting pale rivers across the flagstones. Portraits slumbered in their frames, their painted inhabitants breathing softly beneath layers of enchanted calm. Yet beneath this peace, the forgotten wand stirred again, an almost imperceptible quiver, like a whispered breath against Dumbledore's palm. He ignored it for the moment. Minerva walked beside him, her steps brisk but silent. "We should secure the wand before dawn." "I do not trust that it will remain dormant." "Nor do I," Dumbledore replied quietly. "But a temporary seal will suffice until I devise something stronger." They ascended the spiraling staircase toward his office. The torches flickered as they passed, casting long shadows that trailed behind like uneasy spirits. When they reached the griffin statue guarding the entrance, Dumbledore spoke the password, and the creature leapt aside with a grinding scrape of stone. As they climbed the moving staircase, Minerva glanced at the wand once more. "For something so slender," she murmured, "it casts a long shadow." "A truth of many dangerous things," Dumbledore answered. Inside his office, the magical instruments still trembled from the disturbances earlier in the night. Silver devices emitted faint pings of alarm, while enchanted quills scribbled warnings across parchment before tearing the pages apart in confusion. The air itself crackled with residual energy. Dumbledore raised his hand. "Be still." At his command, the instruments calmed. The quills fell silent. The room exhaled. Minerva shut the door behind them. "Where will you secure it?" Dumbledore approached a tall cabinet carved from dark oak. a relic older than the school itself. Ancient runes ran along its surface, and layers of protective enchantments shimmered faintly around its frame. It was not often used. Only the most dangerous objects earned its confinement. He touched the cabinet, and it opened with a slow, reluctant sigh. Inside rested a handful of peculiar artifacts, a cracked mirror shard that still reflected futures never lived, a quill that wrote truths one did not wish to know, and a stone that whispered in forgotten tongues when held too tightly. These objects were unsettling, but none radiated danger on the level of the wand Dumbledore held now. Minerva stood beside him. "Will the cabinet hold it?" "For a time," he said. Dumbledore placed the wand inside. The reaction was immediate. A pulse of pale blue light burst outward, slamming against the inner walls of the cabinet. The runes flared brightly, resisting the surge. A low hum filled the office, vibrating through the floorboards and shelves. Minerva stepped back, wand drawn. "It is pushing against the barrier." "Yes," Dumbledore said grimly. The wand pulsed again, stronger. The runes trembled, straining under the pressure. Dumbledore raised his own wand, tracing a circle in the air. A shimmering ring of golden light expanded around the cabinet, reinforcing the seal. The wand's glow dimmed, then stabilized, though its shimmer remained restless. After a long moment, the cabinet fell silent. Minerva released a breath. "That may hold for tonight." Dumbledore nodded. For tonight, yes. Yet he could not ignore the lingering whisper he had sensed earlier. A faint message hidden within the magic, subtle as the remnants of a dream. He turned away from the cabinet. "Rest, Minerva. You have carried enough strain for one night." "As have you," she replied. "But something troubles you more than the wand itself." Dumbledore hesitated. The flickering lamplight glinted off his spectacles. "When I touched the wand," he said finally, "I felt something I did not expect. Not simply instability, not the remains of my own enchantments. Something added." Minerva stiffened. Added? By whom? By someone whose influence continues to outlive him. She understood at once. Grindelwald. Yes. A silence settled between them, heavy but not empty. Minerva's voice softened. "What did he leave within it?" "I do not yet know," Dumbledore admitted. "But his magic is unmistakable. It is cunning, layered, easily overlooked, until it chooses not to be." "And the whisper you sensed?" He met her gaze. It was not a voice, more like a direction, as though the wand remembered a purpose. Minerva's expression hardened into resolve. "Then we must uncover that purpose before anyone else does." "Yes," Dumbledore said. "We must." She left him soon after, exhaustion weighing her steps. Once alone, Dumbledore moved to his desk and lit a single candle. Its flame flickered uneasily, reacting to the unstable energy humming through the cabinet. He withdrew parchment and began to write, sketching diagrams of the wand, rune patterns he once used, and theories he had long buried. His quill scratched across the page, steady and precise, though his thoughts churned beneath the surface. Yet every so often, the faint whisper tugged at his mind, a whisper pointing toward a place he had not visited in years, a fortress once ruled by a man he had defeated but could never fully escape. Dumbledore set down the quill. The cabinet throbbed once, softly but unmistakably. The wand was remembering something, and it wanted him to follow. He extinguished the candle. Tomorrow would bring answers, or dangers, he could no longer ignore. Tonight, he allowed only a single moment of quiet, but even in that silence, the whisper lingered, soft, patient, calling. The dawn crept slowly across the high windows of Hogwarts. casting long golden bands of light through the great hall. Students stirred awake, unaware of the tremors that had shaken the earth beneath their resting heads. Only the professors who had felt the night's danger carried its weight into the morning. Dumbledore, however, had not slept at all. He stood alone atop the astronomy tower, robes rippling gently in the cool wind, his eyes fixed upon the distant horizon. The forgotten wand lay far below, locked in the enchanted cabinet, yet its presence lingered in his thoughts like a lingering chord in a half-forgotten melody. Minerva approached softly from behind, her footsteps just audible on the stone. "You've been here since before sunrise." "So I have," Dumbledore replied, though his voice held no apology. "The night offered no rest. Nor did the wand, I assume." "No," he said. "It remains restless." Minerva joined him at the parapet, gazing out across the shimmering lake. "You mentioned a whisper, a direction. Have you discerned what it points toward?" "Yes," Dumbledore answered, his voice tightening with a quiet gravity. "A place where Grindelwald once hid many of his ambitions. A fortress he believed impregnable." Minerva's expression darkened. "Nurmengard." Dumbledore nodded slowly. After a moment of reluctant silence, she asked, "Do you believe something there is calling to the wand?" "Not something," he said, "but someone's legacy." Grindelwald was many things: brilliant, misguided, consumed by visions of a world shaped under his ideals. He wove enchantments into many artifacts, even into the very walls of Nurmengard. If he tampered with the prototype wand, he may have prepared a place for it. Minerva frowned. "You intend to go?" He looked at her, kindly, but with the resolve of a man whose path had already been chosen. "Yes." "Then I am going with you." He shook his head gently. "No. This is a journey tied to an old history, mine, not yours. I will not draw you deeper into shadows meant for me alone." Minerva's jaw tightened. "Dumbledore, I refuse to let you walk alone into a den shaped by Grindelwald's magic." "And yet," he replied softly, "I must." Her eyes searched his, frustration wrestling with concern. But before she could argue further, the school bell rang in the distance, signaling the start of the morning. Students poured from the hallways, laughter and chatter drifting upward like tiny sparks of warmth. Minerva exhaled slowly. "Very well, but promise me you will return." He smiled gently. "I promise to try." That answer did not comfort her, but it was all he would give. By midday, Dumbledore had prepared for his departure. He visited the cabinet in his office. The forgotten wand throbbed softly behind the reinforced runes, its glow muted but far from dormant. He opened the cabinet and the wand lifted itself slightly, as though rising to meet his hand. "It seems you are eager to travel," he said with quiet irony. The wand pulsed once in reply. He grasped it, feeling a faint vibration travel up his arm. Not hostile, but expectant. There was no longer any doubt. The wand wanted to return to where its lingering magic had been shaped. Nurmengard awaited. He tucked the wand safely within his robes, strengthened the protections around it, and left his office. With each step through the castle's wide halls, Dumbledore felt the weight of the past pressing closer. He passed students whispering excitedly about lessons, exams, Quidditch, life blooming in simple, ordinary ways. He paused a moment, watching them. Memories of another time stirred, youth filled with dreams, a friendship turned to ashes, and a world nearly reshaped by their hubris. At the castle gates, Minerva waited. "You knew I would come," she said, folding her arms. "I suspected," Dumbledore admitted. She looked at him with earnest resolve. "At least allow me to accompany you to Hogsmeade." "Very well." Together they walked down the long, sloping path into the village. It was a crisp day, sunlight catching the frost still clinging to the grass. Hogsmeade bustled with life, unaware of the unseen dangers threading their way between its cottages. At the edge of the village, Minerva stopped. "This is where I leave you." Dumbledore inclined his head. "Your presence has been a comfort. Then return safely so that it may continue to be." He gave her a faint smile. "I shall do my utmost." She stepped back, watching as he walked onward. Only when he vanished beyond a bend in the road did she turn away, her expression troubled. Dumbledore apparated to a lonely mountain range, its jagged peaks rising like ancient teeth into a darkening sky. The wind howled fiercely here, carrying the smell of snow and distant storms. Atop the tallest peak stood Nurmengard, a fortress of black stone, stark and brooding, its windows narrow as watching eyes. The great tower reached for the clouds, casting a long shadow over the valley below. Even in disuse, it radiated a foreboding power, a remnant of the fear it once commanded. Dumbledore stood before its towering gates, the forgotten wand vibrating faintly under his robes. "Yes," he murmured, "this is where you wish to return." He pushed open the heavy doors. A low, echoing groan resonated through the halls as he entered. Inside, the fortress lay cold and dim. Dust layered the floors. Abandoned chains hung from the walls. A staircase spiraled upward, leading into darkness. Candles flickered to life as he passed, old enchantments recognizing him, though they did so reluctantly. Dumbledore advanced deeper into the fortress. Halfway up the tower, he felt it. A pull, clearer now, stronger, like a guiding thread tugging at his chest. He followed it. It led him not to the upper cells, where Grindelwald now lived out the last of his years, but to a hidden passage branching away from the main staircase. The door was sealed by a symbol Dumbledore recognized too well, Grindelwald's mark, etched into the stone with deceptive elegance. Dumbledore raised the forgotten wand. It pulsed brightly. The mark dissolved. The passage opened. Cold air seeped out, carrying the scent of untouched darkness. Dumbledore stepped inside. At the end of the corridor lay a chamber carved from black stone, and at its center stood a pedestal, upon which rested a single object, a small ancient runestone glowing with faint silver light. The moment Dumbledore entered, the forgotten wand quivered with unmistakable recognition, and Dumbledore understood, with a sinking weight, that this was no ordinary relic. Grindelwald had left something for him, something meant only to be found by the maker of the wand, something the wand itself had been trying to reach. Dumbledore approached the pedestal, heart steady but heavy. "Old friend," he whispered into the hollow chamber, "what have you left behind?" The chamber was silent, so silent that even Dumbledore's breath seemed loud within it. The air felt thick, heavy with remnants of magic long sealed away. The pedestal stood at the heart of the chamber like an altar, carved from a single block of obsidian, so smooth it reflected the faint silver glow of the runestone resting upon it. That glow brightened as he approached, pulsing faintly in rhythm with the beat of the forgotten wand in his hand. Dumbledore paused an arm's length from the pedestal. For a moment, he simply looked at the runestone, and memories stirred like dust in an opened room. He had seen stones like this only twice before, objects used to bind spells of intention, purpose, memory, and mastery. Grindelwald had always been fascinated by intention, not merely what a wizard could do, but why. And here lay the physical echo of that obsession. The runestone flickered again, illuminating the inscription carved into its surface. Not words, at least not any modern tongue, but a lattice of symbols older than wand lore itself. They intertwined like threads in a tapestry, weaving an enchantment far deeper than ordinary spellwork. The forgotten wand pulsed sharply, straining toward the stone. Dumbledore spoke softly into the stillness. So this is what you embedded into its core. Not simply power, but purpose. He reached out and lightly touched the stone. A shock wave rippled outward, not violent, but sudden, like the gasp of someone waking from a long sleep. The air shivered. Dust swirled upward in spirals. The chamber's walls lit with thin veins of silver, as though awakening from centuries of slumber. And then a voice, not spoken aloud, but echoing clearly within his mind, formed from the stone's magic. A choice, Albus. Dumbledore closed his eyes briefly. The voice was not truly Grindelwald's. It was an echo, a memory woven into the enchantment. But the tone, smooth, persuasive, brilliant, dangerous, was unmistakably his. A choice we once sought together, the voice said. A world shaped by those strong enough to wield true power. Dumbledore opened his eyes. The world we once imagined was flawed from its foundation. I turned away from that dream long ago. Did you? Whispered the echo. Then why did you craft the twin? Why seek to understand the Elder Wand? You wished to know its deepest secrets, as did I. Dumbledore felt the old guilt stirring, but he steadied his voice. Desire for knowledge is not the same as desire for dominion. The chamber darkened briefly, as though the magic disagreed. Then the runestone flared, projecting an image into the air. Misty, shimmering. A wand, identical to the one he now held, but whole, stable, perfect. It spun slowly, surrounded by swirling runes. A wand shaped not by allegiance, the voice murmured, but by intention. A wand that would answer only to purpose, shaped by the heart of its wielder. Dumbledore watched the illusion with growing unease. You sought to change the nature of mastery itself, he said, to free the wielder from moral consequence. To unify power, the echo corrected, to place magic beyond the grasp of fear, weakness, and hesitation. That path leads to tyranny, only when guided by the unworthy. And who, Dumbledore asked softly, determines worth? For a moment, the echo fell silent. Then the runestone dimmed, and the chamber returned to stillness. Dumbledore stepped back. The forgotten wand vibrated with subtle agitation. It wanted something, wanted him to take the stone, to bind the enchantment, to complete what had been started so long ago. The two creations, his and Grindelwald's, were intertwined more deeply than he had realized. But the purpose was not theirs anymore. It was his to end. He raised the wand and aimed it at the runestone. A tremor ran through the fortress. "Finite!" he commanded. The runestone pulsed defiantly, resisting the spell. Cracks flashed across its surface, thin lines of silver that rippled outward like lightning. The walls of the chamber flickered again, the ancient enchantments crying out in protest. The forgotten wand heated in his grip, resisting him, urging him to stop. But he did not. Another spell, stronger than the first, shot from his wand, striking the stone. The cracks deepened, widening. A moan of ancient magic echoed through the chamber. And then, the runestone shattered. Light burst outward, bright and cold, sweeping through the room like a wave. The floor trembled, dust showered from the ceiling. The pedestal collapsed in on itself. Dumbledore braced against the blast, cloak whipping around him. When the brilliance faded, the chamber lay silent again, utterly still, utterly empty. The forgotten wand, however, glowed stronger than before. Dumbledore lifted it, and the wand hummed, not in defiance but in relief. The bond left by Grindelwald had been severed. The lingering whisper was gone, but the wand's instability remained. He sighed, weary. "So much done," he murmured, "and so much yet to finish." He turned toward the corridor and froze. A faint presence stirred beyond the doorway. Not magical residue, not enchantment, something alive. Dumbledore stepped forward cautiously. A figure stood in the shadows just beyond the passage, tall, cloaked, hood drawn low. The figure had not been there when he entered, and no ordinary wizard could have apparated inside Nurmengard. The intruder stepped forward. Moonlight from a narrow slit window fell across the stone floor, illuminating a glimpse of cold, determined eyes beneath the hood. A voice, low and steady, broke the silence. "You should not have destroyed the stone." Dumbledore lifted the wand, though his expression remained calm. "And who," he asked, "believes they have the authority to tell me otherwise?" The figure lowered the hood. The face revealed was sharp, stern, and unmistakably familiar, yet younger than any follower Grindelwald had left behind. Not an enemy he knew, but someone who had been waiting for him. "I am here," the stranger said, "for the wand you carry, and I will not leave without it." Dumbledore's grip tightened, so the first seeker had come, and others would follow. The chamber grew colder as the stranger stepped into the narrow stream of moonlight. Dust swirled around his boots, stirred by an unseen draft, as though even the air recoiled from his arrival. Dumbledore regarded him in stillness, wand held with deliberate ease, not threatening, yet far from passive. The stranger's cloak bore faint embroidery, threads of silver winding along the hem in patterns both elegant and severe. His face was stern, angular, with eyes the color of winter steel, unyielding, calculating, untouched by fear. "I did not expect to find another living soul within these walls," Dumbledore said quietly, "least of all one who walks without hesitation into a chamber bearing Grindelwald's seal. Tell me your name." The stranger did not answer at once. His gaze drifted to the shattered remnants of the runestone scattered across the floor. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but it carried a weighted certainty. "My name is unimportant. What matters is that you have destroyed something meant to be preserved." Dumbledore lifted the forgotten wand a fraction higher. "Preserved for what purpose?" "For the purpose Grindelwald intended," the stranger replied. "For the future he foresaw." Dumbledore's eyes narrowed a fraction. "A future built on dominion and suffering is no future worth safeguarding." "You speak of suffering," the stranger said, "as though your own actions have not shaped it. The prototype wand was not merely a relic of your youth. It was a key Grindelwald intended you to use." Dumbledore's expression remained composed, but ice threading through his veins betrayed the emotion he did not show. "You greatly overestimate my place in his schemes." The stranger stepped closer. "Do I?" The chamber walls creaked faintly, unsettled by the lingering magic of the shattered stone. The air shimmered near the doorway, warping with tension. Though the fortress was empty, it no longer felt uninhabited. Something old and watchful lingered in the shadows, listening. "You need not wield the wand," the stranger continued. "You need only surrender it. There are those prepared to complete what you and Grindelwald began." "I abandoned that path long ago," Dumbledore said, his voice softening with finality. "Nothing in this world, or the next, will compel me to return to it. That is unfortunate." The stranger moved swiftly, too swiftly for an ordinary wizard. In a blink, His wand was drawn, its tip flaring with cold blue fire. The spell he cast was silent, deadly, and swift as a lightning bolt. Dumbledore's response was instantaneous. A golden shield bloomed before him, shimmering like sunlight caught in glass. The blue fire struck it, splintering into harmless sparks. The chamber groaned under the force of the clash. The stranger did not flinch. "You are as powerful as he claimed," he murmured. "Good. The wand will respond more completely because of it." Another spell followed. This one, serpentine, twisting through the air with predatory grace. Dumbledore sidestepped and redirected the attack with a sweep of his wand, sending it ricocheting into the far wall where it detonated with a rumbling crash. Fragments of stone rained down, ringing sharply as they hit the floor. The stranger advanced. Dumbledore matched each step, keeping the distance steady. "If you believe you can force the wand from me, you misunderstand both its nature and mine." "You misunderstand mine," the stranger replied. He lifted his wand once more. This time, the spell he summoned was not an attack, but an invocation, deep, resonant, echoing through the chamber like the toll of a distant bell. Ancient runes flared along the stone floor, rising in spirals of smoke and silver light. Dumbledore's eyes widened. "You bind yourself to forces you do not comprehend," he warned. "I bind myself," the stranger answered, "to destiny." The runes ignited. A wave of pressure slammed outward, knocking loose dust and scattering fragments of the shattered stone. The forgotten wand pulsed violently in Dumbledore's grasp, as though answering a call woven into the stranger's spell. With effort, Dumbledore steadied it. The stranger smiled, not with warmth, but with triumph. "It recognizes me," he said. "It knows I carry his purpose." "No," Dumbledore replied, voice quiet but resolute. "It recognizes danger and seeks protection." The rune's light surged. The stranger thrust his wand forward, focusing the spell with razor-like intent. The chamber crackled with tension. Dumbledore responded with a sweeping arc of golden fire. The spells collided. Magic tore through the air in a violent cascade. A clash of two wills, two pasts, two destinies bound by threads neither had chosen. The walls shuddered, dust spiraling in furious eddies. The floor split, cracks snaking across the stone. The stranger stumbled, but did not fall. "You are wasting your strength," he said, breath tightening. "The wand cannot remain yours. You were never meant to wield it. You were meant to create it." "Perhaps," Dumbledore said, his eyes shining with unwavering calm. "But fate has a way of shifting beneath the feet of those who try to shape it." He raised his wand. Golden light erupted, swirling upward like a tempest. The stranger shielded his eyes as the force hurled him backward into the wall with a resounding crash. His wand clattered across the floor. Silence followed. Dumbledore remained still, breathing slowly, wand raised in case the intruder rose again. But the stranger only slumped, dazed, against the wall. Dumbledore approached carefully. "Who sent you?" The stranger lifted his gaze, fury smoldering within his silver eyes. "You will learn soon enough. We are many. We have waited years for the prototype to awaken, and now that it has found you..." He coughed, breath thinning. "Others will come." Dumbledore stared at him for a long moment. "Then let them come." "You cannot hide forever," the stranger hissed. "I do not intend to hide," Dumbledore replied, "but neither will I allow this wand to fall into hands such as yours." The stranger laughed, a sharp, hollow sound. "Then perhaps you will destroy it." Dumbledore's silence answered him more clearly than words. The laughter stopped. "You cannot destroy it," the stranger whispered. "Not without fulfilling the purpose it was built for." Dumbledore did not react outwardly, but the words struck him like a cold blade. The wand pulsed in his hand, slowly, uncertainly. Purpose. A burden he had thought long buried. The stranger sagged unconscious at last, sliding to the floor. Dumbledore stood alone once more in the ruined chamber, the fortress echoing with the aftermath of their duel. He turned away. The path back through Nurmengard felt darker than before, shadows clinging close as though whispering warnings he refused to hear. When he reached the main hall, the wind howled through the cracked windows, carrying snowflakes that spun like drifting ash. Dumbledore tightened his hold on the forgotten wand. He had severed Grindelwald's lingering enchantment. He had faced the first of those who would seize the wand. And yet, for the first time since touching it, the wand did not merely whisper. It spoke, not in words, but in intent. A direction. A place. Dumbledore's eyes hardened as the meaning took shape. "So that is where you would lead me," he murmured. He drew his cloak around him. The path ahead darkened, but he stepped forward anyway. Snow swept across the mountains as Dumbledore stepped out of Nurmengard's towering gates. The cold bit sharply at his robes, yet he scarcely felt it. His thoughts lay far from the fortress behind him and fixed upon the direction the forgotten wand impressed upon his mind. A pull subtle, yet unmistakable, like the tide's tug upon the shore. He stood for a moment in the biting air, letting the wind carry away the last remnants of Grindelwald's echo. The sky above, pale with winter's coming, seemed to press low upon the rugged peaks. Nurmengard loomed behind him, silent and unmoving, but its shadow stretched long over the snow. Without another glance back, Dumbledore disapparated. He emerged upon a narrow cliffside path overlooking a stretch of wild forest. Frosted branches rattled like bones beneath a gray morning light. The forgotten wand warmed faintly inside his cloak, a guiding spark in the cold. The pull swept southward, toward a place hidden from most, known only to a handful of wizards, some long dead, some vanished, some banished by choice or force. A valley where the remnants of ancient magic slept uneasily beneath the earth. The Hollow of Theoloon. Dumbledore had not thought of that name in years, yet the wand tugged at his senses with an insistence he could not deny. The Hollow had once been a site of wand lore experiments, abandoned centuries before Hogwarts was founded. It was said the earliest enchanters tested their theories there, far from curious eyes and reckless hands. The valley held memories both wondrous and perilous. And now, something within it called to the wand. Dumbledore descended the mountainside. The forest greeted him with a whispering hush. Snow-laden branches bent low overhead, forming drifting arches as he passed. His boots left a trail upon the untouched ground, fading quickly beneath falling flakes. He moved with purpose, yet with a quiet grace, as though slipping between the breaths of the sleeping trees. Hours passed. The sun crept slowly across the sky and dipped again toward the horizon. At last, the forest thinned, revealing a broad valley enclosed by high cliffs. Mist clung to the ground, coiling like pale serpents. Even from afar, Dumbledore sensed the ancient power slumbering within the hollow, vast, deep, and wary of intrusion. He stepped beyond the tree line. The mist stirred. A soft vibration shuddered through the earth beneath his feet, like the beat of a distant heart. The forgotten wand warmed suddenly, sharply, glowing through the folds of his cloak. "Easy," Dumbledore murmured, drawing it out. We walk this path together." The wand pulsed in reply. As he entered the valley, the mist parted to reveal stone monoliths jutting from the earth, tall, weathered sentinels arranged in a wide circle. Their surfaces bore ancient runes eroded by time, though faint traces of enchantment clung stubbornly to them, whispering old names and older warnings. Dumbledore walked into their ring. At once, the air thickened. Magic coiled around him like tendrils of living fog. The monoliths glowed faintly, reacting to the forgotten wand's presence. A deep hum vibrated through the stone, low and resonant, rising in pitch as the wand shone brighter. Then, a shimmer rippled across the center of the ring. The ground shifted, sinking downward in a spiral, revealing steps descending into darkness. A hidden chamber sealed by ancient magic, awakened only at the wand's command. Dumbledore hesitated, not out of fear, but out of recognition. He had suspected the hollow would hold something tied to the wand's unstable creation, but not something prepared centuries before he was born. "Who first shaped this path for me?" he whispered. The wind answered with silence. The wand pulsed, urging him downward. The descent led into a cavern vast enough to swallow a cathedral. The ceiling arched high overhead, lost in shadows that flickered with faint luminescence. Crystal formations jutted from the walls like frozen lightning. Pools of blue water glowed like captured moonlight. But at the center of the cavern lay the true heart of the hollow. An ancient forge, not of fire, but of magic. A wide basin carved from obsidian, lined with runes that burned like starlight. Rests for wands, broken, whole, or unshaped, surrounded the basin in a great circle. Some wands had turned to dust, others remained intact, though lifeless. Dumbledore approached reverently. "This place," he murmured, "was a cradle of beginnings." The basin flickered. A thread of light lifted from its depths, drifting upward like a spirit. The forgotten wand hummed in response. Dumbledore could sense it now. This forge had shaped not only objects, but ideas, intentions, possibilities. It had been used by countless wand-makers whose names had faded from time. But the magic that stirred now was not ancient. It was familiar. Grindelwald's touch lingered faintly in the air, woven into the spellwork around the basin. He had been here, years ago, before their final duel, before the rise and fall of his dark empire. Gellert Grindelwald had sought this chamber. He had laid his hands upon its ancient stone, and in doing so, he had hidden something, preparing it for a future he believed inevitable. The wand pulsed violently. A shape rose from the basin, not solid, but formed of light and memory. A vision, a fragment preserved by enchantment. It showed Grindelwald standing where Dumbledore now stood, his expression hard with purpose, eyes bright with impossible ambition. And beside him, Dumbledore inhaled sharply. Beside him stood a younger version of himself. The illusion wavered, but there was no mistaking it. Two young men, united by brilliance, separated by destiny, shaping a plan that would fracture both their lives. The younger Dumbledore reached toward an unfinished wand upon the basin's edge. The vision dissolved. Dumbledore closed his eyes briefly, grief and regret stirring in quiet waves. "I will not follow the footsteps of that memory," he whispered. Yet something else within the illusion lingered, a final remnant of Grindelwald's voice, faint but clear, carried on the fading magic. "If he refuses what we began, then let the wand seek another. Should he return, let this be the place where his choice is made." The basin brightened. Dumbledore felt the wand lift from his grasp, not wrested away, but rising willingly, guided by the forge's awakening magic. It hovered above the basin, trembling. A choice. Not Grindelwald's. Not fate's. His. The cavern rumbled. The wand glowed brighter, taking on a fierce, shifting radiance. The ancient forge reacted, drawing magic inward in a spiral of light. If he allowed the ritual to complete itself, the wand would become whole, stable, powerful, unbound by the flaws in its creation. It would answer only to intention, just as Grindelwald had once envisioned, and a wand shaped by pure intention could be either salvation or ruin. Dumbledore raised his hand. This ends tonight. He drew his wand. The forgotten wand flared, sensing his resolve. Power gathered. Magic trembled. The ancient forge awakened fully, and Dumbledore prepared to make a choice that could reshape far more than a single wand. The forge flared with sudden brilliance, flooding the vast cavern with ghostly radiance. Shadows danced along the stone walls like memories trying to reclaim form. The forgotten wand hovered above the basin, trembling as though caught between two worlds, its unstable origin and the perfected shape the forge sought to grant it. Dumbledore stood upon the threshold of the platform, the air around him vibrating with ancient power. His own wand gleamed faintly in his grip, strands of gold swirling at its tip like threads drawn from sunlight. The cavern rumbled again, low at first, then rising to a deep, resonant hum. The monoliths of stone around the basin brightened, their runes igniting in rings of silver flame. The forgotten wand pulsed in answered rhythm, each glow stronger than the last. A decision pressed upon him like the weight of the mountain above. He raised his voice, steady and calm, though his heart churned with a tide of old memories. "You were forged from my mistakes," he said to the trembling wand. "Shaped by ambition, touched by a darkness I once called friendship. Whatever purpose you seek, it cannot be one carved from the past." The wand flared, bright enough to sting the eyes. The forge intensified its glow, sending streams of energy spiraling upward like serpents of starlight. They coiled around the wand, testing its limits, weaving patterns from forgotten ages. The basin's magic sought to complete the prototype, to free it from instability, to bind it into something whole. Yet Dumbledore felt the dangerous truth within the ritual. Once whole, the wand would no longer resist its wielder. It would choose intention above allegiance. And intention, he knew too well, could be swayed by despair as easily as hope. A wand shaped only by the will of its bearer could become a force no enchantment could temper. The cavern trembled violently, cracks splitting across the obsidian floor. The forge's ancient hunger awakened further, trying to draw the wand into its heart. Dumbledore stepped forward, cloak swirling in the rising wind. "No," he whispered. "This path ends now." He raised his wand high. Golden light leapt forth, streaking toward the basin. But before it could strike, the forge reacted, sending a shockwave of raw force outward. The blast crashed into Dumbledore like a storm, hurling him backward. He struck the stone floor, breath driven from his lungs. Still, he rose. The wand hovered higher, now shining with a fierce, blinding radiance. The magic of the forge wrapped around it like chains of light, pulling, shaping, binding. "Enough!" Dumbledore's voice thundered through the chamber, echoing off the high walls. He strode forward again, boots grinding across fractured stone. The forge answered with another burst of energy. But this time, Dumbledore met it head-on, sweeping his wand in a wide arc. A shield of shimmering gold unfurled before him, catching the blast and dispersing it in a shower of sparks. Breath steadying, he advanced toward the basin. The forgotten wand spun faster now, caught in the forge's final attempt to complete what had been begun years ago. Its unstable core cried out, wild, brilliant, desperate. Dumbledore felt its fear as clearly as its power. "You were not made for this," he murmured. "You were made to teach me humility, to endanger no one ever again." He reached the edge of the basin. The energy surrounding it whipped at his cloak like snapping flames. Runes flared beneath his feet. The air smelled of thunder and ancient stone. He lifted his wand. Finite Omnium. The spell burst forth, not a beam, but a vast wave of golden radiance. It collided with the swirling magic around the basin, clashing against the forge's enchantments. Light battled light, gold against silver, intention against creation. The cavern howled. Crystals shattered from the ceiling and fell like raining stars. The monoliths cracked. Water surged violently in the glowing pools along the cavern walls. But Dumbledore held firm. The golden light pushed harder, swallowing the silver flame. The forge struggled, resisting with all its ancient strength, but it had never been designed to defy a wizard of Dumbledore's might, only to shape what was given to it. He stepped closer still, pouring more of his will into the spell. The forgotten wand flickered, stuttered, then screamed. A final surge of unstable magic lashed outward, catching Dumbledore squarely in the chest. He staggered but did not fall. With a great sweep of his arm, he pushed deeper into the storm of light encasing the wand. And at last, the wand yielded. The glowing chains of energy around it shattered into fragments. The spirals of silver fire collapsed. The basin dimmed, its runes guttering like dying embers. The forgotten wand fell. Dumbledore caught it in both hands. It burned against his palms, trembling with chaotic magic, but it no longer fought to escape. Its furious glow faded into a faint, unsteady pulse. The forge flickered one last time. Then darkness swallowed the cavern. Only the faint glow of the pools remained, casting pale reflections across the shattered chamber. Dumbledore sank to one knee, exhausted, holding the wand tightly to keep it from falling apart. The ordeal had weakened it, but had not destroyed it. Its magic flickered like a candle in a gale, fragile yet persistent. The forge, however, had been broken beyond repair. The ancient power that slept here would never awaken again. Dumbledore rose slowly, leaning on the basin for support. "You are not finished," he murmured to the wand, "but you will no longer be guided by his purpose, nor by mine." The wand gave a faint throb, as if confused, as if waiting. A distant rumble echoed through the cavern. Dumbledore turned sharply. Footsteps. Not one set. Many. Voices traveled through the tunnel leading into the hollow. Low, determined, drawing nearer. Torches flickered in the distance, their flames harsh and hungry. The Seekers, more numerous than the lone figure at Nurmengard. Dumbledore tightened his grip on the weakened wand. "It seems," he whispered, "that the night is far from over." The voices grew louder. He straightened, eyes bright with calm resolve. The Seekers entered the cavern, and the moment they saw him, their torches guttered in the sudden surge of magic that answered his rising will. Dumbledore lifted his wand. The confrontation had begun. Final part of the story. The Seekers poured into the cavern like a tide of shadows, their boots echoing sharply against the ancient stone. Cloaks billowed behind them, hoods masking all but the glint of steeled eyes. Their torches cast erratic flashes of orange across the walls, yet even fire seemed hesitant to burn in the presence of the magic rising between them and the lone wizard who stood at the forge's edge. Dumbledore faced them without flinching. He stood tall, though weary, the forgotten wand clutched in his left hand, his own wand gleaming in his right. The cavern hummed with unstable energy, as though the earth itself braced for the confrontation. At the head of the group stepped a woman, tall, severe, with hair bound in a silver clasp and eyes sharp as flint. Unlike the hooded followers behind her, she walked with measured, deliberate grace. "We feared we were too late," she said, her voice echoing with chilling composure. "But the wand still answers your call." "It does not answer," Dumbledore replied calmly. "It resists, and it will resist you as well." The woman's lips curled into a ghost of a smile. "Grindelwald taught his followers to recognize power, even when it wears the mask of reluctance. The wand chose you tonight. For that, we are grateful." A murmur rippled through her companions. Dumbledore felt the wand tremble faintly, exhausted from the forge's assault, but still carrying sparks of volatile magic within its core. "You misunderstand the wand," he said. "It has no desire for dominion, only for resolution. Then allow us to give it one." The woman raised her hand, palm outward. "Surrender it, and we shall claim the destiny Grindelwald foresaw. No destiny built upon another man's obsession shall rule this night," Dumbledore answered, voice deepening. The woman lowered her hand slightly, regarding him with cool interest. "So be it." She drew her wand. At once, the cavern erupted with hostile magic. Beams of blue, silver, and crimson light shot toward Dumbledore from every direction, dozens of spells weaving through the air like arrows in a storm. The stone floor exploded beneath the barrage. Crystal shards flew in every direction. But Dumbledore moved like wind through flame. With a sweep of his wand, a shield of golden brilliance unfurled around him, rippling outward like a living barrier. Spells shattered against it in bursts of harmless sparks. He stepped forward, cloak billowing, eyes gleaming with fierce determination. The Seekers pressed in, tightening the circle. Yet Dumbledore did not retreat. Instead, he raised his wand high, and the cavern responded. A surge of ancient magic, drawn from the broken forge and the fractured runes underfoot, rose at his command. Light spiraled upward in a towering column, casting shifting shadows across the cavern walls. The Seekers staggered, shielding their eyes. The woman shouted, "Stay your ground! Do not let him—" But Dumbledore had already moved. He struck. A shockwave of golden force burst outward from the center of the cavern, a sweeping arc of dazzling brilliance. It rushed across the floor like a rising tide, tearing through the Seekers' ranks. Cloaks were ripped away, wands sent flying from startled hands. Some fell to their knees. Others stumbled back, breath stolen by the sheer weight of the spell. The cavern trembled with the force of the blast. Yet Dumbledore did not press the attack. Instead, he lowered his wand and stood tall, voice ringing with calm authority. "Enough." The echoes swallowed the word, sending it rolling through the hollow like distant thunder. The Seekers froze. The woman at their head stared at him, shock creeping into her cold expression. "You will not pass," Dumbledore said. "Not through me, and not through the wreckage of the past." Silence stretched. Only the quiet pulsing of the forgotten wand remained, the faint heartbeat of unstable magic, waiting, watching. The woman lifted her chin. "You cannot fight all of us forever." "I need not," Dumbledore replied. He lifted the forgotten wand slightly, though he did not wield it. "For this wand shall not remain in anyone's hand, least of all mine." Her eyes widened. "You would destroy it?" "Yes," he said softly. "You cannot." "I can," he replied, "and I must." With those words, he stepped to the very edge of the ancient basin, the heart of the forge, cracked and darkened by the struggle, yet still trembling with echoes of power. He held the forgotten wand above it. The Seekers surged forward, panic igniting their faces. "No!" Dumbledore whispered a single word, a spell older than the school, older than most living magic. Reditio. The wand erupted with searing white light. It screamed, not with sound, but with the sudden unraveling of every enchantment ever forced into its frail frame. Its unstable core splintered. Arcs of wild magic crackled outward like lightning across a storm-torn sky. The cavern convulsed. Stone cracked. Dust billowed in great clouds. The Seekers shielded themselves as they were thrown backward by the blast. Even Dumbledore staggered, bracing with all his strength as the wand shattered in his hand. A final, brilliant flare. And silence. The light faded, leaving only drifting motes of gold and silver that vanished slowly into the air. When the haze cleared, nothing remained of the wand but ash, soft as gray snow resting in Dumbledore's open palm. He exhaled, weary but resolute. "It is finished." The Seekers lay scattered, stunned, staring at him in disbelief. The woman rose unsteadily, trembling with fury and shock. You have undone centuries of vision. I have undone a danger that never should have existed," Dumbledore answered, "and freed the world of a path it was never meant to tread." Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with the collapse of certainty. She raised her wand weakly, but her voice quavered. "What now?" "Now," Dumbledore said gently. "You choose your own path, not one carved by another man's ambition." A long silence stretched between them. At last, the woman lowered her wand. One by one, the others did the same. The cavern seemed to sigh in relief. Dumbledore turned away, letting the ashes slip from his hand. They drifted down into the ruined forge, scattering across the stone like remnants of a vanished dream. He walked toward the tunnel, leading out of the hollow, boots crunching softly atop fractured crystal. At the cavern's edge, he paused. The air was cold, still, and strangely peaceful. "May this place," he whispered, "sleep undisturbed at last." And with a final quiet breath, he stepped into the dark passage and vanished into the swirling light of his own apparition. The hollow of Theoloon grew silent once more. The forgotten wand was no more. Yet the world beyond waited, unaware of how close it had come to bearing the weight of an unfinished destiny. But Dumbledore knew, and he carried that knowledge home, step by solemn step, beneath the breaking.